It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean. Not you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
What's up? It's Chris, the Drone Geek, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Drones. Today's episode, I'm eating a big piece of humble pie. This is what I'm doing. Oh boy. I'm happy that I'm making this video because that means that something was fixed. But I am a little bit embarrassed about a previous video that I made now. Because in a previous video, we talked a little bit about the Mavic 3S, the potential for that drone to be coming out. It was leaked that DJI was looking to create a new version of the Mavic 3 sooner rather than later. A lot of speculation on when that would happen. Some rumors said as early as the end of 2022. Others said mid-2023. Either way, there were a lot of people that were very upset and concerned about this information, or this rumor rather. I can't say it's actual information, because a lot of us had just spent between $2,000 and $3,000 on the Mavic 3, whether you got the base combo or the Fly More combo. And some of us even spent $5,000 on the Mavic 3 Cine. So a lot of people were really upset about the idea that this new drone could be coming out, or this new version of the Mavic 3 could be coming out, myself included. I made a long video, not super long, but long enough, got my point across that I wasn't happy about this. Talked about some of the rumors, the specs that the rumors were generating, all that good stuff. And yeah, I was livid. I was really, really mad. And I still am. I'm still upset that there's the potential for the 3S to be coming out so quickly after the 3, especially when we waited for years between the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 3. Now all of a sudden we're just going to release the S within a year or two of the Mavic 3. It's something silly to be upset about, because it's like, hey, they're releasing new drones. That means they're innovating, they're making better tech, but man, you left us hanging for so long, and now all of a sudden we're just pumping it out like it doesn't even matter. Anyway, that was the basis of that video. Recently, May 2022, they released a firmware update. DJI released a firmware update for the Mavic 3, and I am talking about a lot of improvements came to this drone through that firmware update. So I want to start by saying, first of all, thank you, DJI, for doing the right thing, releasing a firmware update that really improved upon the capabilities of the Mavic 3. It was super encouraging to see DJI take that initiative and do the right thing. I know that we talk about DJI sort of being the evil empire, the Darth Vader of the drone industry, but the fact is they're a company that's trying to make money, and if they don't make their customers happy, they won't make money, or at least they put themselves in a position where they may not make money. So whether it was because it was the right thing to do or it was better for the bottom line, DJI had to do something about the shortcomings of the Mavic 3. It's a great drone. It was a great drone out of the box, but there were some things that were a little lackluster. So let's talk a little bit. Before we get into talking a little bit about this update, I want to issue a very, 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 very sincere apology to DJI. I am so sorry for jumping the gun. I am so sorry for being so harsh and so critical in that last video where I talked about where the Mavic 3 fell short and how upset I was about the Mavic 3S. I should have bit my tongue. I'm glad I didn't. I think it's important that we talk about these things. I think it's important that somebody like myself uses my platform to get the word out and talk about these things, but I am sorry for being so critical in that moment. Doesn't mean I won't be again, but I am always going to apologize when I overstep. This is now a case where I overstepped. I'm happy that the drone has gotten its firmware update, and I am very, very sorry for being so harsh and judgmental. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, let's talk about the firmware update. It had, oh my God, there's just so much to it. There's so much to this update. And when I was like typing up the list of features that came with this update, it was like blowing my mind a little bit. I was just like, there's so much to cover here. So because there's a lot to cover, I'm not gonna sit here and have you stare at my ugly face the entire time I'm talking about this. Let's go ahead, pull up a whiteboard. Okay, so we're gonna divide these updates into 5 different categories. The first one is the TeleCamera photo improvements, followed by the TeleCamera video improvements, the Hasselblad camera improvements, the Mavic 3 Cine improvements, and the aircraft improvements. So all of these have a specific category they apply to. Let's go ahead and start with the TeleCamera photo improvements. So the updates that came via this firmware update in May of 2022 include increased photo modes while using the telephoto camera, or the TeleCamera lens, that explore mode lens at the top of the camera body. The photo modes include single shot, AEB, burst, and time shot. They also added support for JPEG and RAW formats. It already supported JPEG, but now you can shoot RAW out of the TeleCamera. And the last improvement was the addition of an adjustable ISO and shutter on the TeleCamera. That means when you're shooting in quote-unquote explore mode, you can now adjust the individual values of the ISO and the shutter. You don't just have to use that exposure value slider that they have in the automatic modes. The next category is TeleCamera video improvements. So there have been 3 improvements made to the video mode when using the TeleCamera on that camera body, that top camera. The first one is a switch from video to TeleCamera mode. So before, you actually had to be in photo mode to switch over to explore mode or switch over to the TeleCamera. Now you can actually do it while shooting in video mode. You can click on the little button and it'll switch from the Hasselblad camera to that TeleCamera at the top of the camera body. It also now supports 4K at 25, 30, and 50 frames per second. It also supports 1080p at 25, 30, and 50 frames per second. And there's also adjustable ISO and shutter values in the TeleCamera during video mode. The next category is Hasselblad camera improvements. I got really excited about some of the stuff on this list. There have been 5 improvements made in this category. The first one is you can now shoot at 200 frames per second at 1080p for super slow motion footage while using the Hasselblad camera. They also added a hybrid log gamma, an HLG. They added an HLG and D-log support to master shots and quick shots. That doesn't include asteroid mode though. They also added a digital zoom up to 3 times in normal video mode. And finally, the Hasselblad camera supports focus track, quick shots, master shots, and hyperlapse while the wide angle lens is mounted. Now, this isn't something you get stock with the DJI Mavic 3. You have to purchase that separately, but they do have a wide angle lens available for this. And before, you couldn't shoot in those modes. You'd have problems when shooting in those modes while you had the wide angle lens mounted. That is no longer the case.
Pardon the interruption, but I have a question for you. Are you a professional drone pilot, but you're struggling to find jobs and opportunities? Are you a recreational pilot looking to make the jump into commercial remote piloting? Were you totally disinterested in drone technology until watching this video featuring the most charming and handsome gentleman you've ever seen? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you need The Droning Company, the #1 online resource for commercial remote pilots. They have articles, blogs, and materials that are guaranteed to inform you and make you a better, more well-rounded remote pilot. Plus, a second-to-none job board with opportunities ranging from 1 and 2 off gigs to full-time staff positions as UAV experts and operators. And the best part? Membership for The Droning Company is just $10 per month. That's it. $10 per month. Don't wait. Check them out online today at thedroningcompany.com and across all major social media platforms. The Droning Company, the #1 online resource for commercial remote pilots.
Our next category is the Mavic 3 Cine improvements. These are just for the Mavic 3 Cine. The first one is it now supports Apple ProRes 422 and ProRes LT formats on the Hasselblad camera. And it also adds a 1-second option to the interval time setting when using hyperlapse while shooting on the Mavic 3 Cine. Our final category is aircraft improvements. These are just general improvements to the flight operations of the aircraft. First and foremost, I thought this one was kind of cool, a little bit scary, but I'll be interested to test it out. It's called the Nifty option for bypass mode in APAS 5.0, which allows the drone to avoid objects at a much closer distance with more accurate obstacle detection. So before, the DJI Mavic 3, if you had it in bypass mode when you were doing obstacle avoidance, would shoot out really wide. We talked about this in our Mavic 3 versus Mavic 2 video with Matthew and Hannah Sherwood. The drone goes out, the Mavic 3 goes out really wide to avoid objects. I think it was between 10 and 15 feet is what I estimated in that display. Now we're going to be reducing that distance so you can get much closer to objects as you're avoiding them. This will add for much cooler cinematic shots, and it might also help in terms of not having your drone go way off course when you're flying to get that really nice smooth video clip. The next one is they added support for the Japanese remote ID requirements. That's going to be important for those of us in the United States moving forward. Not necessarily the Japanese remote ID requirements, but we're looking at remote ID next year. So if they're already adding support for the Japanese remote ID requirements, that means they'll probably have another update that adds support for the United States remote ID requirements. They also have an increased home point refresh rate. So this is going to help exponentially when it comes to detecting the home point and getting your flight in the air, that GPS lock, which we're going to talk about that in a second as well. They also optimize stability of the aircraft when shooting in hyperlapse. I never personally had a problem with this. The hyperlapses I always shot were pretty smooth for the most part. There were a couple that I shot I can remember were maybe a little bit herky-jerky, but overall, I had no complaints. So the fact that they optimized it even further, hey, that's awesome. And the last thing, this is the one that most people are very, very excited about, is they've increased the GPS lock speed for quicker GPS satellite acquisition. You're no longer waiting for 30 seconds to a minute, maybe even 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes, for your drone to lock on to satellites, or vice versa, to have the satellites lock onto your drone. They've fixed that problem. You're going to be able to get your drone in the air faster as the GPS lock has been improved, and it will lock onto satellites, or vice versa. Again, the satellites will lock onto the drone much, much faster than before. This is it's a conflicting video for me because I do have to swallow my pride and eat a piece of humble pie after making that very, very aggressive video that I made a few weeks back. But I'm also just absolutely thrilled that DJI took the complaints, took the issues into consideration, did the right thing, and sent out a firmware update to help those of us that invested that money in the original form of the Mavic 3, that first initial release. They're helping us out a lot, and they're making it much, much easier to swallow that investment and to be happy with it. I no longer am questioning whether or not that was the right choice. Now that they've made these improvements to the drone, I'm certain I did not make a mistake in upgrading from my Mavic 2 Pro to the Mavic 3. But what do you think? Do you think this is too late and they should have released this firmware earlier, or just had this all taken care of before they released the drone? Or are you just relieved like myself that they finally put out a firmware update to fix the issues that were ongoing with the Mavic 3 since its launch? Let me know down in the comments below. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up icon down below. It helps me out a lot, gets this video out into the algorithm. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot, helps increase our viewership, helps increase the Drone Geek Army, and moves us one step closer to monetization. I mean, we're already there with over 1,000 subscribers. We're working on the watch time. The more of you that are subscribed, the more of you that are watching regularly, the quicker we'll get to that watch time threshold that we need in that rolling 12 months. And why I'm telling you all this in such vivid detail about where we're at is because once this channel is monetized, all the money it makes is going to be reinvested back into the channel. So that means we're going to have cooler stuff to talk about. That means we're going to have access to new tech that we can test out together. It just means everything about this channel will get better once we hit that monetization mark. But I can't do that without you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This is your second reminder. Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, I'm Chris the Drone Geek, and I am out of here.